The first gunshot echoed through the mall like a door slamming in an empty house. People stopped mid-stride, heads turning toward the sound that didn't belong among the chatter and muzak. A baby started crying somewhere near the food court.
Are you both all
Near
right?
the fountain, a little
She's
girl
scared,
in
but
a
we're
yellow
okay.
dress stood
We have to
frozen
get her out of
strawberry
here.
ice cream cone tilting in her small hand. Marcus Kane had just stepped out of the phone store with a plastic bag containing 2 pairs of clearance jeans. The baseball cap pulled low over his eyes was faded from too many washes, the brim curved from years of nervous adjustment. He'd learned to move through crowds without drawing attention. Shoulders slightly hunched, gaze down. Invisible. Safe. But his eyes caught the girl first, then the man pushing through the frozen shoppers. Black hoodie, one hand hidden inside the front pocket, paced too fast for casual browsing. The angle of approach was wrong, deliberate. Marcus's body moved before conscious thought could catch up. The bag dropped from his hand as he cut across the tile floor boots, finding purchase on the polished surface. Distance collapsed in seconds. He was 3 feet from the girl when the second gunshot cracked through the air, louder and closer than the first. His shoulder caught her small frame arms wrapping around her as they went down together. The ice cream exploded across the white tile in a pink starburst. Pain tore through his right shoulder, hot and immediate. He kept his body between her and the chaos, feeling her shake against his chest. The man in the hoodie was already running, disappearing into the scattering crowd. Mall security appeared within seconds, radios crackling. One of them was shouting into his handset, calling for medical and police. Marcus stayed down, keeping the girl covered until he was certain the threat had moved away. "You okay, kid?" She nodded against his chest, her face pale but no tears yet. Shock would come later. It always did. Sirens were already building in the distance. Somewhere a tray of food clattered to the ground. Then heels clicked rapidly across the tile, the sharp sound of expensive shoes moving fast. A woman in a dark skirt and blazer dropped to her knees beside them, pulling the girl into her arms with the kind of desperate strength that came from pure terror barely contained. "Emma! Oh my God! Emma!" Her hands moved over her daughter with practiced efficiency, checking for injuries, blood, anything wrong. Then her eyes found the red spreading across Marcus's shirt. Her expression shifted in an instant from raw maternal panic to something cooler, more analytical. This wasn't just a frightened mother. This was someone trained to assess situations, manage crises, make decisions under pressure. She looked at Marcus like she was cataloging every detail about him, filing information away for later use. For 3 long minutes, everything blurred into noise and movement. Security radios, running footsteps, voices calling out. But the woman's gaze stayed fixed on Marcus, studying him with an intensity that felt almost invasive. She didn't know him, had never seen him before today. Yet something passed between them in that moment, some current of recognition that had nothing to do with familiarity and everything to do with seeing someone clearly for the first time. Marcus sat in the back of an ambulance 15 minutes later, his arm wrapped tight in white gauze. The EMT had asked 3 times if he wanted to go to the hospital. The answer remained no. He'd done the math in his head already. Emergency room visit without insurance would cost more than 2 months' rent. The bullet had passed through the outer edge of his shoulder, missing anything vital. It hurt like hell, but pain was temporary. Medical debt wasn't. The woman from before stood a few feet away, still holding Emma close. Her name, he'd learned from the police officer taking her statement, was Elena Whitmore. The way she spoke, the way even the police seemed to defer, slightly told him she was someone important, someone used to being listened to. Her clothes probably cost more than Marcus made in a week at the warehouse. Maybe 2 weeks. The cut of her blazer, the watch on her wrist, the way she carried herself, all spoke of money and power and a world Marcus had only ever seen from the outside. A man in a gray suit appeared at Elena's side, speaking quietly into her ear. His posture screamed ex-military or law enforcement, the kind of bearing that never fully left someone even after the uniform came off. Head of security, Marcus guessed. His name was Tony Vasquez, and from the way he kept glancing at Marcus, he didn't like that a stranger had intervened in his principal's crisis. The look Tony gave Marcus was cold and assessing, not grateful, suspicious. Like Marcus had committed some offense by being in the right place at the wrong time. A police officer approached with a clipboard pen already poised. "So you just happened to be there?" The tone was flat, almost accusatory. Marcus had heard that voice before in different cities, different situations. The voice of someone who looked at his faded jeans and calloused hands and saw potential trouble, not someone who'd just taken a bullet protecting a child. "Yeah, just walking by." The officer wrote something down but didn't thank him. Didn't even meet his eyes. Just another day, another report, another nobody who probably had it coming somehow. Nearby, Tony Vasquez was still whispering to Elena, his eyes never leaving Marcus. Something about the conversation felt wrong, too intense, too focused on someone who'd just helped them. Marcus's babysitter's car pulled into the parking lot 20 minutes later. He'd called her from the ambulance, apologetic about the short notice. Tyler jumped out before the car fully stopped, his 10-year-old legs carrying him across the asphalt at a run. "Dad." He stopped just short of collision. Suddenly, careful eyes wide at the bandage visible beneath Marcus's torn shirt. Marcus managed a small smile, reaching out with his good arm to pull his son close. "It's fine, bud. Just a scratch." Tyler's face said he didn't believe that for a second, but he nodded anyway. He'd learned not to push when his father used that tone. Some things were better left alone. Across the parking lot, Elena Whitmore was still watching, still analyzing. Marcus could feel the weight of her attention, even as Tony continued speaking in her ear, probably running down all the reasons why they should be suspicious of the warehouse worker who'd materialized out of nowhere to save her daughter. Marcus led Tyler back toward the babysitter's car. He'd catch a ride home with them, come back for his truck tomorrow when the parking lot wasn't swarming with police and emergency vehicles. As they walked away, he felt Elena's gaze on his back, but didn't turn around. Some distances weren't meant to be crossed. She lived in a world of corner offices and chauffeurs. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment where rent was always a week late and groceries came from whatever was on sale. Their lives had intersected for exactly 5 minutes, and now they were diverging back to their proper orbits. That should have been the end of it. The apartment was quiet that night. Tyler had finally fallen asleep after asking a dozen questions Marcus couldn't fully answer. "How did you know he had a gun? Why did you run toward the bad guy instead of away? Did it hurt when you got shot?" "Yes, it hurt. It still hurt." Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water going warm in front of him, listening to the small TV in the corner, playing on low volume. A warehouse worker became an unlikely hero today when he saved a young girl from what police are calling an attempted abduction at Westfield Mall. His grainy image filled the screen, standing beside the ambulance, looking tired and older than 34. The caption beneath read, "Kane, 34, warehouse worker." The young girl has been identified as Emma Whitmore, daughter of Elena Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies. Mrs. Whitmore declined to comment, but sources say she is grateful for Mr. Kane's intervention. Marcus switched off the TV. He hadn't asked for this attention, didn't want his name or face broadcast across the local news. Tomorrow, people at work would have questions. His supervisor would give him that look, half impressed and half suspicious, as if Marcus had somehow orchestrated this disruption to the orderly routine of stocking shelves and processing inventory. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister in Ohio. "Saw you on the news, my brother the hero." He didn't respond. Hero. The word sat uncomfortably in his chest. Heroes were celebrated. Heroes were seen. For 3 years, Marcus had worked at building a life where he could be invisible, where no one asked about the nightmares that sometimes woke him, shouting orders to men who weren't there, where no one wondered why someone with his training and skills was stocking shelves for minimum wage. The pain in his arm throbbed dully. He should take the prescription the EMT had written, but he wouldn't fill it. Too expensive. Over-the-counter ibuprofen would have to do. It always had before. 2 days later, Marcus was back at work in the warehouse. The bandage on his arm tugged whenever he lifted a box, but he didn't say anything. His supervisor Carl was watching from the office window, like always monitoring productivity, making sure no one slowed down. Nights here were long and quiet. Rows of pallets, the beep of forklifts, the smell of cardboard and dust. But tonight wasn't normal. Word had spread about the mall shooting. Co-workers who'd barely nodded at him for years now stopped to ask questions. Some seemed genuinely concerned. Others just wanted the thrill of proximity to something exciting to violence and fear they could experience secondhand without risk. Marcus kept his answers short, stayed focused on his work. By midnight, most had lost interest and drifted back to their stations. Near the end of his shift, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Kane." The voice was sharp male, no warmth in it. "This is Tony Vasquez, head of security for Whitmore Technologies. Mrs. Whitmore would like to speak with you in person this afternoon at our headquarters. 2:00. It wasn't phrased as a request. Marcus stopped walking, fluorescent lights humming overhead. "What about? Mrs. Whitmore will explain when you arrive." The line went dead before Marcus could respond. That morning, after dropping Tyler at school, Marcus called his regular babysitter. She had a doctor's appointment and couldn't help. He tried his backup, an elderly neighbor who sometimes watched Tyler when schedules got tight. She had bridge club apologetic but firm. Marcus sat in his truck outside the school, phone in hand, staring at his contact list. He had exactly 2 child care options, and both were unavailable. This was his life. A constant tightrope walk without a net. People with money didn't understand what it meant to have no slack in the system, no margin for unexpected meetings or emergency calls. Finally, he called his sister in Ohio. She lived 2 hours away but had been wanting to visit. She agreed to come, though it would mean missing work herself. Another debt Marcus would have to repay somehow, some way. At 2:00, Marcus stood in the glass lobby of Whitmore Technologies headquarters. Everything was clean lines and expensive furniture. People in suits moved fast with coffee cups and tablets, purpose radiating from every stride. The building smelled like money and ambition. He felt out of place in his flannel shirt and work jeans. The receptionist had looked him up and down when he gave his name, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Mr. Vasquez will be with you shortly." Marcus sat in a chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Above the reception desk, a large screen played a promotional video. Elena's face appeared, speaking confidently about innovation and the future. In that polished setting with perfect lighting and designer clothes, she seemed even further removed from his world than she had at the mall. Tony Vasquez appeared by the elevators without warning. No handshake, no smile. "This way." They rode in silence to the 27th floor. The elevator was fast and silent, nothing like the grinding industrial lift at the warehouse. Tony led him through open office spaces where people glanced up briefly, then back to their screens. No one seemed surprised to see a man in work jeans walking through. Perhaps Elena Whitmore often brought in charity cases. The conference room was all glass walls and polished wood. Elena was already seated at the head of the table, looking like she'd stepped out of the same promotional video. Navy suit hair perfect, but her eyes were tired and her phone kept buzzing on the table. She silenced it without looking. "Mr. Kane, we appreciate what you did at the mall." Marcus nodded once. Simple. Direct. No need to elaborate. "I'm glad she's okay." Tony crossed his arms, positioning himself slightly behind and to the right of Elena. Guard dog. Protector. Someone who'd failed in his primary duty and wasn't happy about the reminder. "Here's the issue. You've been in the news. Some reporters are asking questions about you, your past. We'd like to make sure there's nothing that could put Mrs. Whitmore or her daughter at risk." Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd been looked at this way before, like he had to prove he deserved to stand where he was standing, like his presence was inherently suspicious rather than helpful. "I didn't do anything wrong." Tony didn't flinch. "That's what we need to be certain of." He slid a piece of paper across the table. Non-disclosure agreement. Dense legal text that boiled down to "sign away your right to talk about this, submit to our investigation, let us control the narrative. Sign this and agree to stop talking to the press if they find you." We'll also need to run a background check. Marcus stared at the paper. So this was how it worked. You save someone's daughter, and they respond by treating you like a potential threat. They wanted to own his story, control. His words make sure the warehouse worker didn't cause problems for people who mattered. So you want me to sign away my right to talk about saving her? Tony's expression didn't change. It's about privacy. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. It's about control. The words hung in the air between them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Elena's phone buzzed again, but she didn't answer it. Instead, she studied Marcus with new intensity, as if finally seeing something beneath the surface she hadn't noticed before. There was a military precision to his posture, a controlled awareness of the space around him that most civilians lacked. The way he sat, the way his eyes tracked movement through the glass walls, the stillness that came from discipline rather than passivity. We're offering to cover any medical costs from the injury. Elena's tone had softened slightly. An olive branch, a gesture of goodwill. Marcus stood his chair, sliding back smoothly. I'm fine. Tony stepped into his path, subtle but clear. Think about your son before you make this harder than it has to be. The words hit harder than the bullet had. Marcus went very still. When he spoke, his voice was low but perfectly clear, each word chosen with care. Don't ever use my son to threaten me. Something flickered in Elena's eyes. Surprise. Respect, maybe. For just a moment, the corporate mask slipped and Marcus caught a glimpse of the mother beneath the woman who had run through the mall in heels, desperate and terrified, searching for her child. Mr. Vasquez, that's enough. Mr. Kane is free to go. Marcus walked out without another word. In the elevator, he exhaled slowly, controlling the anger that had risen at Tony's implied threat. He'd spent years learning to manage that anger, to channel it into precision rather than explosion. Those were skills the Marines had given him, skills that had kept him alive in places where losing control meant losing everything. When Marcus got home, Tyler was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. His sister had made mac and cheese, Tyler's favorite. The familiar smell of comfort food filled the small apartment. How was it? Tyler asked without looking up from his math problems pencil, hovering over fractions. Just a meeting. Marcus dropped his keys into the bowl by the door. He didn't mention the NDA, didn't mention the way Tony had looked at him like a problem to be managed. Tyler had enough to worry about. Fourth grade was hard enough without adult problems bleeding into his world. The next morning, Marcus's phone rang while he was making Tyler's lunch for school. Carl from the warehouse. Ryan Corporate wants to talk to you. Seems they got a call from someone at Whitmore Technologies. Marcus frowned, hand pausing over the sandwich he was assembling. About what? Carl sighed on the other end of the line. Didn't say, but they're nervous. You know how it is. Bad press, liability concerns. Might be best to take a few days off. Paid vacation. Few days off meant no paycheck. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Tyler needed new winter boots before the snow came. The bullet wound in Marcus's arm seemed to throb in time with his heartbeat. Carl, I need the hours. There was a long pause. Marcus could hear the discomfort in the silence. I know, man, but orders came from upstairs. Nothing I can do. Think of it as paid vacation. 2 days, that's all. But Marcus knew what paid vacation meant for hourly workers. It meant, go away until we decide if you're worth the trouble. It meant your next paycheck will be light. It meant the razor-thin margin between making rent and falling behind just got thinner. Outside the kitchen window, Tyler was waiting for the school bus lunchbox in hand. He looked small in his too-big jacket, a hand-me-down from a cousin. Marcus had promised him a new one this winter. Promises were easy. Keeping them took money. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He didn't answer. He didn't know yet if the shot he'd taken was the real wound or if the worst was still coming. That night after Tyler went to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a small wooden box in front of him. He hadn't opened it in years. The brass latch was worn from time, and when he flipped it open, the faint smell of oil and leather drifted out. Inside were three things: a folded American flag, the kind given to families of fallen soldiers, a tarnished challenge coin from his unit, and a letter creased so many times it was starting to tear at the edges. He didn't take the letter out, just looked at it, remembering. The air had been hot and dry, the kind that stuck in your throat. Marcus had been flat on a rooftop rifle balanced on its bipod. Through the scope, the streets below looked close enough to touch. His spotter's voice came through the earpiece, calm and focused. Marcus had adjusted his breathing, slow, steady. Every muscle in his body knew what to do without thinking. The shot had to count. It did. Back in the kitchen, Marcus shut the box and slid it back into the cupboard above the fridge behind a stack of old tax forms. He didn't talk about those years. Not to Tyler, not to anyone. People saw the worn baseball cap and the warehouse job and thought they knew him. That was fine. Easier, even. But tonight, with Tony Vasquez's threats still echoing in his head, he wondered how far they'd go, and if keeping quiet would protect Tyler or put him in more danger. At Whitmore Technologies, Elena was pacing her office. It was late, most of the building dark, but she couldn't shake the image of Marcus pushing Emma to the ground. The way he'd moved. Fast, precise, no hesitation. She'd seen people freeze in emergencies. She'd seen people panic. She'd never seen someone react with that kind of instant tactical awareness. Tony stepped in holding a folder. "We still don't have the full report on him, but I found a record of military service. Honorable discharge. No details." Elena looked up. "No details." Tony shook his head. "Sealed." Elena sat back, frowning. She didn't like loose ends. As CEO, her job was to manage risk, to know everything about anything that might affect her company. And now Emma's name was linked in the press with a man whose background was mostly blank spaces. It wasn't acceptable. "Keep digging. I want to know who he really is." Across town, Marcus sat in the dark, his phone lighting up with another unknown call. He didn't answer, but a thought stayed in his mind, persistent and unwelcome. If they pushed him far enough, they'd find out exactly who he was, and that might not be what any of them wanted. The morning news was full of the mall shooting. Marcus watched while making Tyler's breakfast volume low so it wouldn't wake his son. The story had evolved overnight. Now it wasn't just about random violence. Sources close to the investigation suggest this may have been an attempted kidnapping rather than a random attack. The daughter of tech CEO Elena Whitmore would make a valuable hostage. Police are investigating possible connections to corporate espionage or extortion attempts. Marcus turned off the TV as Tyler came into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Dad." Tyler climbed into his chair, spooning cereal into his mouth while Marcus poured orange juice. "Tommy at school said you're famous now. He saw you on TV." Marcus forced a smile. "Not famous, bud. Just in the right place at the right time." Tyler considered this while crunching through his Cheerios. "Like a superhero, but without the cape." Marcus ruffled his son's hair. "Eat up. Bus comes in 10 minutes. After Tyler left for school, Marcus checked his phone. 3 missed calls, all from unknown numbers, and a text message. "Need to speak with you urgently. D. Vasquez, Whitmore Security." Marcus deleted the message. Whatever Tony wanted, it could wait. He had more immediate problems, like finding temporary work for the next few days until the warehouse called him back. He spent the morning making calls, pulling in favors. By noon, he'd lined up 2 days of work helping a former Marine buddy install drywall in a renovation project across town. Not great money, but better than nothing. Marcus was changing into work clothes when someone knocked at the door. Loud, insistent. Through the peephole, he saw 2 people in suits and a woman with a badge clipped to her belt. Federal agents. His stomach tightened as he opened the door. "Mr. Kane, we need you to come with us. It's about the mall shooting." The taller man spoke first, his tone professional but firm. "Am I under arrest?" The woman shook her head. "No, but your name has come up in connection to new threats against Elena Whitmore and her daughter. We believe the shooter wasn't acting alone." Marcus looked back at Tyler's empty room, then at the agents. "I need to call my sister to watch my son." They nodded, patient but clearly not willing to wait long. Marcus made the call quickly, explaining without explaining. His sister agreed immediately, concern sharp in her voice. He hung up and grabbed his jacket, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his injured shoulder. The ride to Whitmore headquarters was silent. Marcus watched the city pass by, the gap between his neighborhood and the gleaming downtown towers growing wider with each block. The agents didn't offer information, and he didn't ask questions. He'd been in enough government vehicles to know when talking wouldn't help. At Whitmore, the building was swarming with security. The lobby that had been sleek and quiet days ago was now full of uniformed officers and anxious employees. Something had changed. Something big. Tony was barking orders into a radio when Marcus walked in with the agents. His eyes narrowed instantly. "What's he doing here?" The woman with the badge replied, her tone brooking no argument. "Because he might be the only one who can stop what's about to happen." Marcus said nothing, but his eyes scanned the room automatically. The nervous receptionist. The guards shifting at the entrance. A delivery truck idling too long outside the glass doors. Something clicked in his mind, pattern recognition honed by years of training. He walked to the security monitors without asking permission. On one screen, a man in a cap and maintenance uniform wheeled a cart toward the service elevator. His posture was wrong. Too rigid, too fast. Marcus pointed at the screen. "That's him." Tony scoffed. "We've got hundreds of contractors here. What makes you think—" Marcus cut him off, voice quiet, but carrying an edge that made both agents look at him with new interest. "His right hand never leaves his pocket. He's hiding something, and he's using a false gait to keep a limp from showing. That means prior injury, probably military or police training." Tony blinked, thrown off. "You can tell that from a grainy camera feed." Marcus didn't answer. He was already moving. The service hallway smelled like cleaning chemicals and oil. The man with the cart was halfway to the elevator when Marcus called out, "Stop right there." The man froze, then kept walking. Marcus's voice went sharper command, cutting through the fluorescent hum. "You don't want to do this." The man turned slightly, his left shoulder dipping, that telltale sign of someone reaching for a concealed weapon. Marcus closed the distance fast, his injured arm held tight to his side, his other hand moving like it remembered 1,000 repetitions. In one motion he kicked the cart sideways. It crashed into the wall, tools scattering. His hand locked around the man's wrist, twisting until a black handgun clattered to the floor. The man swung at him, but Marcus ducked, hooked his leg, and brought him down hard onto the concrete. By the time security arrived, Marcus was kneeling on the man's back, the gun kicked out of reach. Back in the lobby, chaos erupted. Employees gathered whispering. Elena rushed in, pulling Emma close when she saw the weapon in the evidence bag being carried past. Tony tried to speak, but the lead FBI agent cut him off. "If this man had gotten upstairs, we'd be dealing with a hostage situation right now. Kane spotted him in under 10 seconds. Tony's jaw worked, but no words came out. The power dynamic had shifted visibly, and everyone in the room could feel it. Elena looked at Marcus. Really looked at him for the first time, without the filter of suspicion or class difference clouding her vision. "You've done this before." It wasn't a question. Marcus kept his voice even. "Once. Twice." Tony finally spoke, his tone brittle. "You have training." "What kind?" Marcus didn't answer directly. Some truths weren't meant for open lobbies and curious ears. "Let's just say I used to keep worse people than him from hurting good people." There was a long pause. Then Elena turned to Tony, her voice carrying the weight of executive decision. "From now on, if Marcus says something's a threat, you listen." The shift was instant. The same man who had cornered Marcus in a conference room 2 days ago now stood silent, the power gone from his posture. Marcus felt no satisfaction in the victory. He knew how quickly tides could turn, how easily today's hero became tomorrow's liability. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the police were gone, Elena approached Marcus in the quiet of the lobby. Sophie was coloring at a nearby table, humming to herself, oblivious to the danger that had stalked the building an hour before. "You didn't have to come today." Elena's voice was softer than he'd heard it before. Marcus shrugged. I know. She glanced toward Emma, then back to him. You saved her twice now, and you stopped something we didn't even see coming. Marcus watched the little girl, her tongue stuck out slightly in concentration as she colored inside the lines. You just have to know where to look. For a moment, there was nothing but the soft sound of Emma humming. Then Elena said what she'd been thinking since the moment Tony had threatened Marcus in the conference room. Maybe I was wrong about you. Marcus gave a small smile. Maybe. For the first time, Elena seemed uncertain, the corporate armor showing a crack, a human being beneath the title and the power. Mr. Kane, Marcus, I'd like to talk more about security, about what you saw that we missed. Marcus checked his watch. His sister would be at the apartment soon with Tyler. He'd promised to be home in time for homework. I need to get back to my son. I promised. Understanding flashed in Elena's eyes. Another single parent. Another person juggling impossible schedules and trying to be present for a child who deserved more than stolen moments. Of course. Tomorrow then. Marcus nodded. Tomorrow. As he walked out of the building, Marcus felt lighter than he had in days. Not because of the recognition or the grudging respect he'd earned from Tony's team, but because for the first time in years, someone had seen what he could do instead of what he couldn't. Someone had valued the very skills he'd been hiding. He called his sister from the car. I might be late tomorrow. Can you stay another day with Tyler? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Everything okay? Marcus looked back at the Whitmore building gleaming in the afternoon sun. Yeah, I think it might be. The story hit the local news that night. Headlines read, Warehouse worker stops second attack at Whitmore Technologies. Clips showed security footage of Marcus bringing the suspect down the movement, efficient and controlled. Reporters called him a hero, a man of few words. For once, the attention didn't come with suspicion. In his apartment, Marcus helped Tyler with math homework. The boy was struggling with fractions, pencil erasing more than writing. You have to find the common denominator, the number that connects them both. As he said it, Marcus thought about Elena, about how different their lives were, how unlikely their connection. Sometimes the universe found strange denominators, numbers that shouldn't divide evenly into each other, but somehow did. His phone buzzed with a text, Elena's personal number forwarded through Jennifer. Security briefing tomorrow, 10 a.m. Car will pick you up at 9:30. Thank you for today. Marcus set the phone down. Tyler looked up from his homework. Dad, are you going to be a hero again tomorrow? Marcus smiled despite the weight settling in his chest. The invisible man had been seen. The walls he'd built around his past had cracked, and somewhere in that crack, a new possibility was taking root. No, Bud. Tomorrow I'm just going to be a guy who notices things. That's all I've ever been. But as he said it, Marcus knew something had changed. The invisible path had diverged. He'd stepped into light he never wanted, drawn back toward a life he thought he'd left behind. And somewhere in the space between who he'd been and who he was becoming, between the protector and the father, between the skills that kept people alive and the quiet life that kept Tyler safe, Marcus had to find a way forward. That night as Tyler slept, Marcus opened the wooden box again. This time he took out the letter. The paper was thin, yellowed at the edges, the handwriting cramped but precise. To the man who saved my children. There are no words for what you did, for the shot you took when no one else could. My family will never know your name. Your country will never give you medals for this, but I will remember. And somewhere in this broken world, 3 children will grow up because you did what heroes do. You saw what needed to be done, and you did it without hesitation, without reward, without recognition. Marcus folded the letter carefully and returned it to the box. Tomorrow would bring questions he wasn't ready to answer, about classified missions and skills the public wasn't supposed to know existed. But tonight, in the quiet of his small apartment with his son sleeping safely down the hall, He allowed himself to remember the man he had been before he became invisible. The sniper on the rooftop. The Marine who never missed. The protector who saw threats before they materialized. Marcus Kane closed the box and placed it on the shelf. Tomorrow, he would step into the light just a little. Not for recognition or reward, but because sometimes being unseen wasn't a choice. It was a luxury others couldn't afford. Emma couldn't hide from those who would harm her. Elena couldn't shield her company from threats she couldn't see. And sometimes the greatest act of protection was making yourself visible again, even when every instinct screamed to stay hidden. The morning light would come soon enough, and with it, a phone call that would change everything. 2 days after stopping the second attack, Marcus stood outside Whitmore Technologies headquarters, watching the morning sun glint off glass and steel. His truck looked out of place among the BMWs and Teslas in the visitor lot. The building rose like a monument to ambition and success, everything his life wasn't. His hands rested on the steering wheel, knuckles white from grip. The decision had been wrestling with him since Elena's call yesterday. Accept her offer and step back into a world of security and threats, or return to the warehouse where he could blend into shadows and safety. Both paths had costs. Both would reshape Tyler's life as much as his own. His phone buzzed. Text from his sister. "Did you decide yet? Tyler asked me this morning if you're going to be a superhero for real now." Marcus smiled despite the weight in his chest. Kids saw things simply. To Tyler, this was an adventure story where his dad played hero. But Marcus knew better. Real heroes didn't get second chances. They didn't get to rebuild lives after everything shattered. They just kept carrying weight until it broke them. Still, Elena's offer lingered like an unfinished conversation. Benefits. Health insurance that would cover Tyler's asthma medication without him having to choose between prescriptions and groceries. A salary that meant no more midnight calculations about which bills could wait another week. And beneath those practical considerations, something else. A chance to use the skills he'd spent years trying to forget. To be valued for the very things that once set him apart. Marcus checked his watch. He was already 10 minutes late for his warehouse shift. The choice was making itself whether he wanted it to or not. He started the engine and pulled away from the curb, heading not toward Whitmore but toward the industrial district where the warehouse stood like a gray fortress against the morning sky. Carl met him at the loading dock, clipboard in hand and worry in his eyes. "Thought you weren't coming." Marcus punched his time card, already reaching for his safety vest. "Got held up." The look on Carl's face said there was more. There was always more lately. "Corporate guys are here. They want to talk to you." Marcus's hand paused on the vest. Carl's expression was carefully neutral, but tension lived around his eyes. The meeting was brief and clinical. 2 men in suits Marcus had never seen before and would never see again. They sat across from him in the break room, fluorescent lights humming overhead like insects. "We value your contributions." The older one slid a white envelope across the table, the gesture smooth and practiced. Words like company image and potential liability floated between them like smoke. Marcus barely listened. He'd heard versions of this speech before in other contexts from other men who never did the work but always made the decisions. Inside the envelope were termination papers, clean, corporate, efficient. 2 weeks severance plus accrued vacation time. No mess, no fuss. Just the invisible man being erased one more time. Marcus signed without argument. Fighting would accomplish nothing except delay the inevitable. The decision had been made long before he walked through the door. As he handed back the clipboard, the younger suit cleared his throat. "You understand you're not to discuss the circumstances of your separation with the media." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I don't talk to the media." The quiet certainty in his voice made both men shift uncomfortably. Something in Marcus's stillness suggested a capacity for action they couldn't quite place but instinctively recognized as dangerous. Outside in the bright morning sun, Marcus sat in his truck. The severance check would cover rent for a month, maybe 6 weeks if he was careful. After that, the calculations got harder. He didn't finish the thought. One battle at a time. That's how he'd survived before. That's how he'd survive now. His phone rang. Elena's number. He let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. On the fourth try, he answered. "I've been calling you for days." Elena's voice carried the crisp authority of someone used to immediate responses, but underneath was something else. Concern, maybe. Or just frustration that her calls had been ignored. "Been busy." There was a pause on her end, the sound of papers rustling. "I need your answer, Marcus. The position is still open, but I have a board meeting tomorrow and I need to present my security restructuring plan." Marcus watched a forklift load pallets onto a truck. A world he'd been part of 30 minutes ago now closed to him. "I just got fired." The line went silent for a moment. When Elena spoke again, her tone had shifted. "Because of what happened at Whitmore." Marcus stared at the warehouse loading dock. "Because I'm a liability. Because I made the news. Because keeping me employed became more complicated than letting me go." He could almost hear Elena thinking through the implications, the calculations she was running in her head about optics and responsibility and unintended consequences. "Then the timing is perfect. Come work for us." The simple logic of it hit Marcus harder than he expected. One door closing, another opening. The universe's way of shoving him through the window because he'd been too stubborn to use the door. "I'll be there in an hour." The drive to Whitmore felt different this time. Not a journey into foreign territory, but a return to something familiar. The skills Elena wanted from him, the alertness and pattern recognition and quick decision-making. These were the very things that had once defined him, the things he'd tried to bury beneath boxes and invoices and the quiet routine of night shifts. Security met him in the lobby. Not Tony this time, but a younger man with a military haircut and the respectful nod of someone who recognized a fellow veteran without needing confirmation. He escorted Marcus to a conference room where 3 people waited. Elena, a woman he didn't recognize, and a tall man with silver hair who carried himself like someone accustomed to authority and deference. Elena made the introductions. "Marcus, this is Jennifer Reeves, my executive assistant." Jennifer extended her hand, her grip firm and professional. She looked like the kind of person who knew where every body was buried and exactly which levers to pull to get things done. "And Wallace Morris, chairman of our board." Wallace's handshake was assessing the kind that measured strength and commitment in the pressure of fingers and duration of contact. "I understand you've twice intervened in threats against our CEO and her daughter." Marcus nodded once, keeping his response minimal. "Right place, right time." Wallace exchanged a glance with Elena, something unspoken passing between them. "Mrs. Whitmore tells me you have military background. Special training." Marcus kept his face neutral. "I served." The careful phrasing didn't escape Wallace's notice. His eyes narrowed slightly. "We both know serving covers a lot of territory. What exactly did you do?" Marcus had been asked this before by people with clearances and need to know. He gave the same answer now he'd given them. "Force recon, multiple deployments, specialized training in threat assessment and neutralization." Wallace leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. "And now you work in a warehouse." The implied judgment hung in the air. Marcus didn't take the bait. "Worked, past tense." Elena straightened in her chair, her voice cutting through the tension. Wallace Marcus's instincts and training have already proven invaluable. He identified a threat our entire security team missed. Wallace's expression remained skeptical. "We're grateful. But there's a difference between a heroic moment and a corporate security position. We need credentials, experience, a track record." Jennifer spoke up, surprising everyone. "If I may, I've reviewed Mr. Kane's military record. What's available of it? Force recon, multiple deployments, specialized training and threat assessment and neutralization. His record speaks for itself." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. His military file was heavily redacted, most operations sealed under classification that wouldn't expire for decades. The fact that she'd found anything at all was both impressive and concerning. Wallace seemed unmoved. "Military experience doesn't always translate to corporate security. Our shareholders expect professionals with established credentials." Elena's voice took on an edge Marcus hadn't heard before. Our shareholders expect us to keep this company secure. Marcus has demonstrated abilities our entire security team lacked. I'm hiring him, Wallace. This meeting was a courtesy, not a request for permission." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Wallace's expression hardened, but Elena held his gaze unflinching. After a long moment, he stood. "You're making a mistake." Elena didn't blink. "Perhaps. But it's my mistake to make." After Wallace left, the atmosphere lightened slightly. Jennifer offered Marcus a small smile. "Sorry about that. The board is traditional in their thinking. They prefer people who look the part on paper." Elena moved to the window, looking out at the city. "Wallace thinks in terms of credentials and pedigrees. He doesn't understand that sometimes the most valuable skills come from places you can't put on a resume." Marcus studied her profile against the bright window. She meant it. She actually saw him saw past the warehouse job and worn jeans to something underneath. "Why are you doing this?" Elena turned, meeting his gaze directly. "I know enough. I know you saved my daughter without hesitation. I know you spotted a threat in seconds that our entire security team missed. And I know that when you walked into this building, you immediately assessed exits, sightlines, and potential vulnerabilities. That's not something you can teach. That's something you live." For the first time since entering the building, Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. She'd seen him, really seen him. Not the warehouse worker or the single dad struggling to make ends meet, but the trained operative whose senses never truly switched off. "When can you start?" Marcus thought about Tyler waiting at home, about the severance check that would only stretch so far. "I need to pick up my son from school at 3. Elena nodded without hesitation. "Jennifer will handle your paperwork and get you set up. We'll work around your schedule for now." She moved toward the door, then paused. "And Marcus, wear whatever makes you comfortable. I don't care if you never put on a suit. I just care that you see what others miss." After Elena left, Jennifer helped Marcus navigate the maze of corporate onboarding, forms and badges and system access, the 100 small details that transformed a stranger into an employee. As they worked, her efficiency reminded Marcus of the best operations officers he'd known in the service. Thorough, detail-oriented, always 3 steps ahead. Elena doesn't usually go against Wallace. Jennifer's comment came casually as she entered Marcus's information into the system. He was her mentor when she first joined the company. She values his opinion. Marcus absorbed this, understanding the significance. Then why did she this time? Jennifer looked up from her tablet, her expression thoughtful. "Because you terrify him." Marcus raised an eyebrow. She continued, "It's not what you've done, it's what you represent. Someone who can't be controlled by the usual corporate levers, someone whose value comes from within rather than from the institutions Wallace respects." Her fingers flew over the screen as she spoke. "And because Emma hasn't stopped talking about the hero man since the mall. Elena might be CEO, but she's a mother first. You proved you could protect her daughter when our entire security apparatus failed." By the time Marcus left to pick up Tyler, he had a temporary badge, a company email, and a contract that made his eyes widen when he saw the salary figure. 3 times what he'd made at the warehouse. The health insurance would start immediately, covering both him and Tyler, with no gap in coverage. For the first time in years, he felt the grinding pressure of financial insecurity begin to ease. Tyler was waiting at the school gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, in a posture that suddenly reminded Marcus so much of himself it made his chest tighten. His son was growing up, taking on mannerisms and expressions Marcus hadn't consciously taught him. Time was moving too fast. "Did you take the job, Dad?" Tyler asked as he climbed into the truck, his 10-year-old directness cutting through any attempt at deflection. Marcus started the engine. "How'd you know about that?" Tyler rolled his eyes with the exasperation only a child could muster. "Aunt Lisa told me. She said you might get to wear a suit and have a fancy office." Marcus smiled. "I took the job, but no suit. And I don't know about the office yet." Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he asked the question Marcus had been dreading. "Is it because of the girl you saved, Emma?" Marcus navigated through afternoon traffic, choosing his words carefully. Partly. Her mom runs the company. She thinks I can help keep everyone safe. Tyler nodded slowly, then hit Marcus with the real question. Like you used to do in the Marines before Mom died. The mention of Sarah was unexpected. Marcus hadn't discussed his military service in detail with Tyler beyond the broad outlines. Dad was in the Marines. Dad protected people. Dad came home when Mom got sick. The rest, the classified operations and specialized training and things he'd seen and done, those were buried deep. Something like that. But different too. No more long deployments. No more being away from you. Tyler seemed satisfied with that answer. He pulled out his homework as they drove, already moving on to the next concern. Tommy says his dad was in the Army and he's gone all the time. I like having you home. Marcus reached over and ruffled his son's hair. Good, because I like being home with you. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open to Whitmore's website. The About Us page showed Elena standing with a group of executives, Wallace among them. Her corporate biography was impressive. MBA from Wharton, previous executive positions at 2 other tech firms, numerous awards and recognitions. Nothing about the trailer in rural Pennsylvania. Nothing about the path that took her from there to here. Everyone had their cover stories, Marcus thought. The narratives they presented to the world carefully edited to show only what they wanted others to see. His was the simple warehouse worker, the unassuming single dad. Hers was the polished executive, the natural-born leader. Both masks hiding more complex truths beneath. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. Heard you're joining the team. Welcome aboard. Some of us are grabbing drinks tomorrow after work if you want to join. Mike, Security Operations. Marcus set the phone down without responding. The social aspects of corporate life were foreign territory. In the warehouse, relationships were simple. You worked your shift, maybe exchanged a few words about sports or weekend plans and went home. No happy hours, no networking, no navigating the invisible lines of office politics. Another text came through, this one from Elena. First security briefing tomorrow 9 a.m. Bring your perspective, not what you think we want to hear. Marcus closed the laptop. Tomorrow he would step into a new role, a new identity. Not quite the Marine he'd been, not quite the warehouse worker he'd become, but something in between, something new that he was still figuring out. The security briefing room at Whitmore was state-of-the-art. Multiple screens displayed camera feeds, access logs, and threat assessment dashboards. The team consisted of 6 people, all men, all with backgrounds in either law enforcement or private security. They watched Marcus with expressions ranging from curiosity to open skepticism as he took a seat at the back of the room. Mike Daniels approached with an extended hand. Glad to have you on board? His welcome seemed genuine, but Marcus could feel the reserve behind it. The others introduced themselves with professional courtesy, but the underlying message was clear. He was an outsider, an unknown quantity, someone brought in over their heads by the CEO herself. They would work with him because they had to, but trust would have to be earned. Elena arrived precisely at 9, Jennifer 2 steps behind with a tablet in hand. Good morning, gentlemen. I see you've met Marcus Kane, our new security consultant. The briefing was comprehensive but revealed gaps that made Marcus uneasy. The team focused on traditional security concerns like access control, surveillance, and event security, but seemed to lack awareness of more sophisticated threats. When Marcus asked about digital surveillance countermeasures and pattern recognition in potential hostile reconnaissance, he was met with blank stares. Frank Torres, the eldest of the security team, bristled slightly. We leave the cyber stuff to IT. We handle physical security. Marcus kept his voice level, non-confrontational. The people targeting your company don't make that distinction. They use all available vectors to gather intelligence and plan their approach. Frank's expression suggested he didn't appreciate the lecture, but before he could respond, Elena stepped in smoothly. That's precisely why Marcus is here, to help us see the blind spots we didn't know we had. She turned to Marcus, giving him the floor. What would you recommend as first priorities? Marcus considered carefully. These were professionals in their field. Alienating them would only create resistance and make his job harder. Integration. Security isn't just cameras and guards. It's understanding the full spectrum of threats and how they interconnect. We need IT in these meetings. We need to know about executive travel plans, public appearances, social media presence. We need to start thinking like the people who want to harm this company, not just respond after they make their move. To Marcus's surprise, Mike nodded slowly. He's right. We've been operating in silos. IT does their thing, we do ours. External threats, internal threats, cyber threats, all separated. Elena made a note on her tablet. Jennifer set up a cross-functional security meeting for tomorrow. ITHR Communications Legal. Let's start breaking down these walls. She looked around the room, her gaze settling on each team member in turn. Gentlemen, I expect your full cooperation with Marcus. His expertise has already saved lives in this building. That's not up for debate. After the meeting, Marcus found himself alone with Elena in the elevator. The corporate mask had slipped slightly, revealing fatigue around her eyes. They don't like me, Marcus observed, not complaining, just stating fact. Elena glanced at him. They don't know you. Give it time. Results speak louder than resumes in this business. The elevator reached the executive floor. Elena started to step out, then paused. Wallace doesn't like you either. Marcus allowed a slight smile. I noticed. Elena's lips curved slightly, a rare crack in her professional facade. Wallace doesn't like anything that disrupts his orderly view of how the world should work. He'll come around. Or he won't. Either way, you're here because I want you here. The elevator doors started to close. Elena put her hand out to stop them. I have a board meeting. Jennifer will show you to your office, such as it is. Marcus's office turned out to be a small room near the Security Operations Center previously used for storage. A desk had been wedged into one corner, a computer set up, but not yet connected. The walls were bare except for a large map of the building and surrounding area. Jennifer appeared in the doorway with an apologetic expression. Sorry about the accommodations. Space is tight and this was the best we could do on short notice. Marcus surveyed the room, mentally calculating sight lines to the main entry points, distance to stairwells, overall defensive positioning. It's perfect. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. It's a glorified closet. Marcus moved to the window, checking the view of the street below. Direct visual access to the main security monitors and quick access to 2 exit routes. I've worked in worse. Jennifer studied him with new interest, seeing the calculation behind his acceptance. You're not what I expected. Marcus turned from the window. What did you expect? She considered the question. Someone more aggressive, I suppose. Most security specialists I've met like to make their presence known. You seem to prefer being underestimated. Marcus didn't confirm or deny. Being underestimated kept you alive in certain parts of the world. It was a habit he saw no reason to break. Jennifer handed him a folder. These are the security assessments from the last 2 years. I thought you might want to review them. She placed a key card on the desk. This will get you access to all areas except the server rooms. IT is still paranoid about the new guy. As she turned to leave, Marcus called after her. How did you know about my military record? Jennifer paused in the doorway, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'm very good at my job. And Elena doesn't make decisions like this lightly. She needed to know who she was bringing into her company, into her daughter's life. After Jennifer left, Marcus sat at the desk and opened the security reports. They were thorough but conventional, focused on incidents rather than patterns. Break-ins, corporate espionage attempts, disgruntled employee situations, all documented and resolved according to standard protocols. But nowhere did he see the kind of integrated threat assessment he'd been trained to develop. The kind that looked not just at what had happened, but at what could happen based on evolving patterns and emerging threats. He was still reviewing files when Mike appeared in his doorway. We've got a situation. Marcus followed Mike to the Security Operations Center where multiple screens showed a protest forming outside the building. Signs denounced Whitmore's latest facial recognition technology, calling it invasive and dangerous. Started about 20 minutes ago. Looks peaceful so far, but we're concerned about escalation. Marcus scanned the feeds, noting the composition of the crowd, the positioning of protest leaders, the police response forming at the edges. Have you seen any of these faces before at other protests or around the building? Mike shook his head. We don't typically track individuals unless they've been flagged as threats. Marcus leaned closer to one of the screens, his attention caught by a man standing slightly apart from the main group. He wasn't chanting or holding a sign. He was watching his gaze methodically scanning the building's perimeter. That one. Get me a closer look. The camera zoomed in. The man was in his 40s, wearing a nondescript jacket and cap. Nothing remarkable about him except the disciplined way he observed the slight bulge under his jacket that suggested a concealed weapon, and the comm device just visible in his ear. He's not a protester. He's using the protest as cover for surveillance. Mike looked skeptical but professional. How can you tell? Marcus pointed at the screen. Because I've done the same thing. Look at his positioning. He's not engaged with the crowd at all. His focus is entirely on the building. Watch his pattern of movement. He's mapping security response staff exits, delivery entrances. Anywhere people might move in or out during a situation like this. The team checked all entry points and found 2 more observers positioned at strategic points around the building, all maintaining distance from the actual protest, all with the same focused attention on Whitmore's security measures. What are they doing? Frank asked, his earlier skepticism giving way to concern. Marcus kept his eyes on the screens. Gathering intelligence, testing your response protocols, seeing how you handle disruption. They're preparing for something bigger. He turned to Mike. Does Elena have any public appearances scheduled soon? Speaking engagements? Charity events? Anything where her movements would be predictable? Mike checked the calendar. Charity gala next week. Annual event for the Children's Hospital. She's the keynote speaker. Marcus's expression darkened. That's what they're preparing for. A target of opportunity when she's outside the building's security perimeter. Over the next hour, they identified and tracked 5 suspicious individuals using the protest as cover, all former military or law enforcement based on their bearing and movement patterns, all conducting professional surveillance. Jennifer's research quickly confirmed Marcus's assessment. The men worked for Argent Strategic Services, a private military contractor firm, and Argent had been hired by a shell company that, after several layers of investigation, traced back to Chen Industries. When Elena learned the name, her face went pale. David Chen, my former business partner. Marcus watched her process this information, saw the calculations running behind her eyes. Tell me about him. Elena's voice was tight when she answered. We co-founded a startup 10 years ago. When acquisition offers came, I wanted to keep the company independent. David wanted to sell. It got ugly. She moved to the window, arms crossed. He claimed I stole proprietary algorithms he developed. Tried to sue me. Lost when evidence showed the work was collaborative. He walked away with his share of the company, but none of the patents. He's been building a rival firm ever since, always one step behind Whitmore. Marcus absorbed this, the pieces falling into place. And now he's hired professional surveillance teams to target you and Emma. That goes beyond corporate rivalry. Elena's jaw tightened. David always took business personally, but I never thought he'd go this far. The implications shifted everything. This wasn't some anonymous corporate threat or random violence. This was personal, driven by history and grudges and wounded pride. Those elements made prediction harder, risk assessment more complex. Marcus turned back to the security monitor's mind, already recalculating. This changes the approach. Chen knows your patterns, your thinking. He's not just some random corporate rival. He knows your vulnerabilities because he worked alongside you for years. He looked at Elena directly. What do we do? The question came from Elena, but Jennifer and the security team were all watching, waiting. Somehow, in the space of a few hours, Marcus had become the authority they deferred to. We changed the plan, all of it. If Chen knows you, he'll anticipate your standard security approach. So we do something completely unexpected. For the next 2 hours, Marcus rebuilt the security plan from scratch. No standard formations, no predictable rotations, no conventional arrival protocol. By the time he finished, the strategy bore more resemblance to a special forces infiltration than a CEO's appearance at a charity event. Jennifer reviewed the final plan, her expression thoughtful. "This is unorthodox." Marcus didn't apologize. "Orthodox is predictable. Predictable is vulnerable." Elena studied the new approach, her analytical mind processing the tactical shifts. "Wallace won't like this. It doesn't follow any of our established protocols." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Wallace doesn't need to know the details. Just tell him the plan has been adjusted based on new intelligence." As the day wore on, Marcus briefed the security team on the revised strategy. Most accepted the changes with professional adaptation, absorbing the new protocols and asking sharp questions about execution. But Tony Vasquez, recently returned from administrative leave and demoted to a junior position, made his skepticism clear. "This isn't how we operate. You're undermining years of established procedure based on what a hunch about some corporate rival with a grudge." Marcus kept his voice even, refusing to rise to the bait. "Not a hunch. Pattern recognition. Chen has hired military contractors to surveil Elena and her daughter. That's not standard corporate espionage. That's targeted intimidation with potential for escalation." Tony's face flushed. "And you're the expert on escalation, I suppose? The warehouse worker turned security guru overnight." The room went silent. Everyone felt the tension crackling between the demoted security chief and the newcomer who had effectively replaced him. Marcus met Tony's gaze with perfect calm. "I've seen how quickly surveillance turns to action. I've tracked that progression across multiple theaters of operation. And yes, in those contexts, I am the expert in this room." No boasting, just quiet certainty backed by experience Tony couldn't match or challenge. Tony opened his mouth to retort, but Elena's entrance cut him short. She surveyed the room immediately, sensing the charged atmosphere. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" Marcus maintained eye contact with Tony for one more beat before responding. "No problem. Just ensuring everyone understands their role in the revised security plan." Elena's gaze lingered on Tony without exception. "Good. Mr. Vasquez, I expect each of you to execute Marcus's plan precisely." After the meeting dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with Elena in the elevator. "Tony's going to be a problem." His observation was quiet, factual. Elena sighed. "I know, but firing him outright would create legal issues after his demotion. HR is watching the situation closely." She looked tired suddenly, the weight of managing personnel conflicts on top of security threats visible in the set of her shoulders. "His pride is wounded. He was respected in this company before you arrived." Marcus considered his response carefully. "Pride gets people killed in high-risk situations." Elena studied him. "Is that what this is, high risk?" Marcus thought about Chen's escalating surveillance, the professional contractors, the deliberate targeting of Emma. Chen has crossed lines most corporate competitors wouldn't. He's hired military-grade surveillance. He's targeted your daughter. His actions suggest he's willing to go further than business rivalry usually allows. The elevator reached the lobby. Elena stepped out, then turned back. "You're speaking from experience, aren't you? You've seen what happens when personal grievances mix with professional resources." Marcus gave a slight nod. "It rarely ends well without intervention." That evening, Marcus drove to Elena's sister's house in Westchester County to drop off Tyler. The property sat at the end of a long driveway screened from the road by mature trees. Natural defensibility with good visibility in all directions. Marcus approved as he pulled up Tyler dozing in the back seat after the hour-long drive. Emma burst from the front door as they arrived, Elena following at a more measured pace. The girl's excitement at having Tyler stay over was infectious. "Tyler, Mom said you're sleeping over for 2 whole days. I can show you the treehouse and the creek and the frogs." Tyler climbed out of the truck, still groggy from his nap, but managing a sleepy smile. "You have frogs?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Hundreds. Well, maybe like 10. but they're really loud at night." Elena approached as the children moved toward the house, Emma already detailing the extensive frog-finding expedition planned for morning. "Thank you for bringing him. It makes this easier for Emma. For all of us, really." Marcus retrieved Tyler's overnight bag from the truck. "Your sister's place is good. Isolated, defensible, limited approach vectors." Elena's lips curved slightly. "Most people would say it's charming or peaceful." Marcus handed over the bag. "Those two. I've arranged for a security detail to maintain perimeter surveillance overnight and until we return. They're discreet, experienced. Your sister won't even notice them." Elena's smile faded. "She's already complaining about all the precautions, says I'm being paranoid." Marcus glanced toward the house where the children had disappeared inside, their laughter audible through the open windows. "Paranoia keeps people alive when the threats are real." Elena nodded, slowly understanding. "I should go. Early start tomorrow." She hesitated, something unspoken hovering between them. "Be careful tomorrow. Chen knows me, which means he might anticipate some of our countermeasures." Marcus met her gaze. "That works both ways. You know him too. His habits, his thinking patterns. That gives us an edge." Understanding passed between them, the kind of tactical alignment that came from shared purpose. "He's meticulous, detail-oriented, hates improvisation, always wants control of every variable." Marcus filed this information away, already adjusting his mental model of their opponent. "Then we make sure he doesn't have it." The drive back to the city gave Marcus time to think, to run through contingencies and weak points in the security plan. Chen's involvement changed the calculus significantly. This wasn't some anonymous corporate threat. This was personal, driven by history and grudges and wounded pride. Those elements made prediction harder, risk assessment more complex. By the time Marcus reached his apartment, a new determination had settled in him. This wasn't just about protecting a CEO and her company anymore. It was about two children asleep in a house in Westchester. About promises made to keep them safe. About preventing the kind of loss that had shattered his own life 3 years ago when Sarah died and left Tyler without a mother. The morning of the charity gala dawned clear and cool. Marcus arrived at Whitmore before sunrise, reviewing last-minute security adjustments and coordinating with external teams. By noon, everything was in place. Alternate routes mapped, decoy vehicles prepared, communications channels secured. Elena found him in the Security Operations Center, focused on surveillance feeds from around the hotel venue. She looked different today. Not the corporate executive in a power suit, but a woman preparing for an evening event. More vulnerable somehow, despite the added security. "Is everything ready?" Her voice carried uncertainty he hadn't heard before. Marcus turned to face her. "As ready as it can be. Remember, you don't go anywhere without direct confirmation from me. Not even if someone on the security team tells you to move. We have to assume potential insider threats." Elena's eyebrows rose. "You think Chen has someone inside Whitmore?" Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the city below. "I think prudence requires we consider all possibilities. Tony Vasquez is disgruntled, has access to our security protocols, and has a history of arrogance regarding external assessment. That makes him vulnerable to manipulation or recruitment." Elena processed this, her analytical mind running scenarios. "You want to remove him from the security detail?" Marcus nodded. "I already did. He's been assigned to headquarters monitoring instead." Elena's expression suggested she understood the implications. "He'll see that as a further insult." Marcus checked his watch. The schedule had Elena departing at 4, arriving at 5 for the pre-event reception. They'd adjusted to departure at 3:45 alternate route, with a stop at an unrelated location to break any surveillance tail. Better an insulted security officer than a vulnerable principal. His military terminology slipped out naturally. Elena noticed but didn't comment. "And Chen Do, we have eyes on him." Marcus pulled up a live feed on one of the monitors. "He's under surveillance, currently at his office downtown. We'll know if he moves." He hesitated, then added what needed to be said. "Elena, if at any point I tell you to abort the appearance, I need you to do it without question or hesitation, even if it means disappointing the charity organizers." Their eyes met a moment of understanding passing between them that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchy and everything to do with trust earned through action. "I trust your judgment, Marcus. If you say we pull out, we pull out." The afternoon unfolded according to plan. Elena departed Whitmore through the underground garage, switching vehicles twice before arriving at the hotel through a service entrance. Security teams reported no surveillance detection, no unusual activity around the perimeter. Everything seemed quiet. Too quiet for Marcus's comfort. By 6 o'clock, the charity gala was in full swing. 400 guests filled the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, champagne flowing and auction paddles rising for hospital equipment and research funding. Elena moved through the crowd with practiced charm, greeting donors and administrators, while Marcus maintained a discreet position nearby earpiece, allowing constant contact with the security team. So far, the revised plan was working perfectly. No sign of Chen's surveillance teams, no suspicious activity, just a successful charity event raising money for children's cancer research. Marcus's instincts screamed that something was wrong. At 6:30, his earpiece crackled with urgent communication from Mike at the command post. "Marcus, we have a problem. Tony's gone offline. He's not at the monitoring station and his credentials were just used to access the secure server room at headquarters." Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. All the pieces suddenly aligned into a pattern he should have seen earlier. "Lock down the servers, full containment protocol, and get me eyes on Elena right now." Mike's voice came back steady despite the crisis. "She's still in the main ballroom east side near the stage. What's happening?" Marcus began moving through the crowd toward Elena, his movements controlled but purposeful. "I think this was never about the gala. It was about creating a diversion to access Whitmore systems while security focus was elsewhere. Chen doesn't want to embarrass her. He wants to steal from her while she's unprotected." He reached Elena, who looked up from her conversation with the hospital director, immediately reading the tension in his posture. She excused herself and moved to meet him. "We need to leave now." Marcus kept his voice low but urgent. "Tony has compromised headquarters security. This event was a diversion." Elena processed this without visible reaction, years of corporate crisis management kicking in automatically. "The children," Marcus had anticipated the question. "Security at your sister's confirms all clear. They're safe." Relief flickered across her face before professional focus returned. "We need to get back to Whitmore immediately." They had almost reached the service corridor when Marcus's instincts flared. A man approaching from their left, moving too directly, too purposefully through the crowd. Hand inside his jacket, eyes locked on Elena with laser focus. Marcus reacted without conscious thought, pivoting to place himself between Elena and the approaching threat. "Down!" He barked the command while shoving her toward the cover of a nearby pillar. The man withdrew not a weapon but a small aerosol canister. Security converged from multiple directions, but the man had already sprayed the contents toward them. Not a lethal attack, a diversion. Guests began coughing alarms, spreading through the crowd like ripples in water. Hotel security dealt with the growing chaos, while Marcus maintained his grip on Elena's arm, pulling her into the service corridor as sirens began wailing. "Chemical agent?" Elena asked as they hurried down the corridor, Marcus's radio alive with status reports. "Likely just CS gas or pepper spray. Enough to create confusion, not meant to cause serious harm." His hand stayed on her elbow, guiding her through the unfamiliar service areas with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the layout days ago. They exited through the hotel kitchen, emerging into the loading dock area where their backup vehicle waited. As Marcus helped Elena into the SUV, his phone buzzed with an incoming call from Jennifer. "Ryan, we have confirmation. Tony used his access to insert a data extraction program into the R&D servers. It's pulling proprietary research files and sending them to an external server. IT is trying to stop it, but he used his legitimate credentials. The system thinks the access is authorized." Marcus started the engine, pulling away from the hotel as police vehicles arrived at the main entrance. "Is Tony still in the building?" Jennifer's voice carried tension he'd never heard from her before. "No. Security footage shows him leaving 20 minutes ago. but Marcus' facial recognition identified David Chen entering through the loading dock during the shift change. He's in the building. Elena, listening to Marcus's side of the conversation, went pale. He's at Whitmore now. Right now. Marcus accelerated, weaving through evening traffic with practiced precision. The muscle memory of tactical driving courses came back effortlessly, finding gaps and angles that shouldn't exist. Elena gripped the door handle as he cut across 2 lanes. "Where did you learn to drive like this?" Marcus kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "Marine Corps tactical driving course. They trained us for every high-risk scenario." 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Elena made calls, activating the board and legal team and crisis PR. Marcus coordinated security through his headset, his voice calm and directive. "Full lockdown. No one in or out. Converge on R&D floor, but do not engage Chen. Wait for me." Elena glanced at him sharply. "Why wait for you?" Marcus took a turn faster than advisable, the SUV's tires finding grip at the edge of their limit. "Because Chen hired military contractors. Your security team is good, but they're not trained for hostile engagement. I am." The truth hung between them, unavoidable now. Elena studied his profile against the lights of passing cars. "Who are you really, Marcus? What did you do in the Marines?" Marcus was silent for a long moment before answering. "Things that kept people safe. Things I don't talk about." They arrived at Whitmore to find the building in full security, lockdown, emergency lights pulsing in the underground garage. Marcus parked near the executive elevator, checking his weapon before exiting. Elena saw the gun for the first time, her eyes widening slightly. "You're carrying—" Marcus's expression didn't change. "Since day one. I told Jennifer during onboarding." The elevator required Elena's biometric scan to operate during lockdown. As they ascended toward the executive floor, Marcus checked the magazine and chamber with movements so automatic they seemed unconscious. "When we get there, stay behind me. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't argue. Don't hesitate. Understood?" Elena nodded, seeing a side of Marcus she'd only glimpsed before. The operator. The protector. The man who'd lived in a world of violence she couldn't fully comprehend. The elevator slowed, approaching the 27th floor. Marcus positioned himself to exit, first senses heightened and focused. The doors slid open to reveal the darkened reception area, illuminated only by emergency lighting casting long shadows. Marcus scanned the space with the methodical precision of someone trained to assess and neutralize threats. "Clear," he murmured, motioning for Elena to follow as he moved toward the corridor leading to the main office suite. They had almost reached Elena's office when a figure stepped from the shadows. Tony Vasquez held a tablet computer in one hand and what appeared to be a small-caliber pistol in the other. His face was flushed, eyes too bright with adrenaline and fear. "Stop right there, both of you." Marcus assessed the situation in fractions of a second. Tony's stance, his grip on the weapon, the distance between them, potential cover options. The gun was real, but Tony held it like someone who'd qualified at a range, not someone who'd used one in actual confrontation. "You don't want to do this, Tony. Security is already converging on this floor. There's no way out." Tony's laugh was brittle, cracking at the edges. "There's always a way out for people with leverage." Another voice, smooth and cultured, came from behind Tony as David Chen emerged from Elena's office. Unlike Tony, he projected calm control, the confidence of someone who believed victory was already secured. "Hello, Elena. Surprised to see me?" Elena's expression hardened into something cold and cutting. "Not particularly. Corporate espionage seems right up your alley, David, always taking shortcuts instead of doing the actual work." Chen smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "That's rich coming from you. We both know whose algorithms built the foundation of your precious company, algorithms I never received proper credit for." Elena's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "The courts disagreed, multiple times." Chen's smile tightened, edges going sharp. "Courts can be wrong. History, however, will correctly record who developed the quantum encryption breakthrough." By tomorrow morning, North Point Technologies will announce a major development in the field using research we've legitimately acquired. Marcus maintained his position slightly ahead of Elena, eyes tracking between Tony's weapon and Chen's position, looking for openings and calculating angles. Theft isn't legitimate acquisition. Chen's attention shifted to Marcus for the first time, really seeing him. And who might you be? Ah, yes, the warehouse worker turned hero. Quite the fairy tale. Former military, I understand. Well, Mr. Kane, even military training won't help you now. Tony has been kind enough to grant us access to Elena's most closely guarded research, and we're almost finished copying it. Marcus noted the tablet in Tony's hand, likely controlling the data transfer. The weapon was secondary. The real threat was the intellectual property being stolen in real time. Why Tony professional jealousy doesn't explain this level of betrayal. Tony's jaw tightened, pain and anger warring in his expression. Try financial necessity. Chen's paying me enough to disappear afterward, something Whitmore's salary never would have managed. Chen checked his watch with theatrical precision. The transfer is nearly complete. In 5 minutes we'll be leaving with the future of quantum encryption in our possession. Marcus heard the faint sound of movement in the stairwell behind them. His security team positioning for entry. He needed to keep Chen and Tony talking, keep their attention focused forward rather than on potential approaches from behind. The building is locked down, all exits secured. How exactly do you plan to leave? Chen's confidence didn't waver. Executive helicopter pad, Elena's private access. Tony has been kind enough to provide all the necessary codes and clearances. A short flight to a private airfield, then overseas before anyone can stop us. Marcus assessed the angles, the timing. Security would breach the floor within minutes, but that could trigger Tony to react unpredictably. The weapon in his hand might be small caliber, but at this range it was still lethal. Elena's voice cut through the tension, softer now, almost conciliatory. David, this isn't you. Corporate espionage threatening children. You were better than this once. Chen's expression flickered, momentary uncertainty crossing his features before hardening again. You left me no choice. You took everything. The company, the patents, the recognition. Do you know what it's like watching from the sidelines as you receive accolades for work we did together? Elena took a small step forward, her tone shifting to something more personal. Then let's talk about proper recognition, a joint research partnership. Public acknowledgement of your contributions to the original algorithms. There are better solutions than this. Marcus recognized what Elena was doing. Creating connection, humanizing herself to Chen, giving him a potential off-ramp from the escalating situation. It was well executed, the kind of negotiation tactic that might work with a rational actor driven by legitimate grievances. But Marcus had seen the coldness in Chen's eyes, the calculation behind his actions. This wasn't just about recognition or financial gain. This was about power, about winning, about making Elena feel the helplessness he'd experienced. Tony shifted nervously, glancing at Chen. The transfer's complete. We need to move. Chen nodded, focused, returning. Elena, I'm afraid negotiation time is long past. We'll be taking the research and leaving now. His gaze shifted to Marcus. Mr. Kane, I suggest you step aside. Tony seems rather tense, and accidents happen. The security teams were in position now. Marcus could hear the soft communications through his earpiece, but a direct breach risked escalation, potential harm to Elena if Tony panicked. A different approach was needed. Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational. Before you go, you should know the quantum encryption research you're stealing is worthless without the authentication keys stored in Elena's personal server. Separate system, separate security protocols. It was a calculated bluff based on standard security practices for high-value intellectual property. Marcus watched Chen's face carefully, looking for the tell. Chen frowned, glancing at Tony. Is this true? Tony hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his expression. I don't know. My access was limited to the R&D servers. Security protocols aren't my department anymore." Marcus pressed the advantage, his tone matter of fact. "The research is deliberately segmented. What you have is incomplete. Useless without the authentication framework." He turned slightly toward Elena, giving her the cue. Elena caught on immediately, her voice carrying absolute conviction. "Basic security protocol for all our most sensitive research. I implemented it after you left the company, David. Seems you don't know my systems as well as you thought." Doubt crept into Chen's expression, the certainty of victory beginning to waver. "You're lying, trying to buy time." Marcus shrugged the gesture, deliberately casual. "Maybe. Or maybe you're about to flee the country with incomplete research that will identify you as a thief but provide no actual competitive advantage. Quite a risk to take." Chen's composure cracked further. He looked at Tony with accusation in his eyes. "You said the entire project was on the R&D servers." Tony's panic was visible now, attention shifting from Marcus and Elena to Chen. "That's what I was told. Security protocols weren't my responsibility after the demotion." In that moment of divided attention, Marcus made his move. The training from countless hours of close-quarters combat drills took over muscle memory, executing faster than conscious thought could process. Explosive forward sprint. 12 feet covered in just over a second. Left hand striking Tony's wrist with precision, deflecting the weapon upward. Right hand locking Tony's elbow, using his momentum against him. Pivot twist, controlled application of force. Tony crashed to the floor, the weapon skittering across polished tile. Total elapsed time 2.3 seconds. Elena was already moving her foot, connecting with the gun and sending it spinning under a nearby lab bench, instinct overriding hesitation. Tony froze, hands raised in surrender. "I'm done. I surrender." Marcus knelt on Tony's back, controlled pressure, keeping him immobilized without causing injury. "Don't move. Don't struggle. This ends here." Chen lunged for the fallen weapon, but security teams burst through the stairwell door surrounding him before he could reach it. Mike Daniels led the response, weapon drawn and voice commanding. "Mr. Chen, hands where we can see them. Now." Chen's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him as reality crashed through his carefully constructed plan. He raised his hands slowly, defeat written in every line of his body. "Secure both suspects. Call FBI. This is federal corporate espionage." Marcus maintained his position until additional security arrived to take custody. As they pulled Tony to his feet and cuffed both men, Chen looked at Elena with something like desperation. "You don't understand. You took everything from me. My work, my reputation, my future." Elena's voice was soft but firm, carrying a sadness that surprised Marcus. "I took nothing you didn't agree to contractually. Your pride destroyed you, David. Not me." The FBI arrived within the hour. Agents separated everyone for individual interviews, professional and thorough. Marcus gave his statement with the precision of someone who debriefed countless operations. Tony cooperated fully, his story spilling out in a rush of self-preservation. Chen had recruited him 8 months ago, promised $500,000 plus assistance fleeing the country. Tony had provided security protocols, access codes, installed the backdoor in R&D servers months before his demotion. He'd never intended violence, thought it was just data theft, never signed up for what it had become. Chen refused to talk without lawyers, but FBI investigators found evidence on his devices that painted a comprehensive picture. Emails with Argent, strategic detailing surveillance operations, plans to extract leverage, thinly veiled references to kidnapping schemes targeting Emma, financial transfers totaling $780,000 for the operation. And something else, a connection to the mall shooting. Chen had hired a separate actor to test Marcus to see if he would protect Emma. The whole incident had been orchestrated to gauge response patterns and protective instincts. The FBI agent delivering this information to Elena watched her face carefully. "Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Chen had a comprehensive plan to kidnap your daughter and force you to transfer intellectual property. The mall shooting was his way of testing threat response. He was willing to terrorize an 8-year-old child for revenge. Elena's face went white, all the color draining in an instant. She gripped the edge of the table for support. Emma was never in random danger. It was always David. All of it. The agent's expression was sympathetic but professional. "Obsession makes people dangerous, ma'am. You're fortunate Mr. Kane was there." It was 4 in the morning when Marcus and Elena finally left the police station, exhausted, wired on adrenaline that had nowhere left to go. Tyler and Emma were still safe at Laura's house, sleeping peacefully, while their parents dealt with the aftermath of threats they'd never fully understood. Marcus and Elena stood on the station steps, the city quiet around them in the pre-dawn darkness. "I watched you move tonight. That wasn't self-defense training. That was something else." Elena's voice carried curiosity without accusation. Marcus looked out at the empty street, choosing his words. "Marine Corps combatives, plus some things I can't talk about." Elena nodded slowly, accepting the boundaries. "Classified," Marcus confirmed with silence. Elena's hand reached out, touching his arm briefly. "Not romantic. Connection. Acknowledgement." Marcus didn't pull away. "Thank you for protecting us, for seeing what others missed." That afternoon, the Whitmore board held an emergency session. Wallace Morris led the discussion, his silver hair and commanding presence filling the conference room. Elena, Marcus, and Jennifer presented the security failure's legal exposure and PR implications. Wallace's attack was predictable and pointed. "This breach happened because we deviated from established security protocols. Mr. Kane's unconventional approach created chaos that allowed an insider threat to flourish." Elena's response was immediate and sharp. "Marcus's approach prevented a kidnapping and exposed the insider threat we didn't know existed. Tony Vasquez was our employee for 12 years. That's a failure of personnel management, not security protocol." Wallace leaned forward, his voice taking on an edge. "The man was in your employ under your leadership. This reflects poorly on executive judgment." Marcus spoke up, his intervention rare and therefore carrying more weight. "With respect, Mr. Morris, conventional security failed repeatedly. I identified threats your team missed because I wasn't following the playbook. I recognized patterns invisible to people who'd been staring at them for months." Wallace's eyes narrowed. "And what qualifies you to rewrite that playbook? A warehouse job in some military service?" Marcus held his gaze without flinching. "I spent 8 years in situations where failure meant death. I learned to see threats before they materialize because that's what kept people alive. Your established protocols nearly got your CEO killed and her daughter kidnapped." The bluntness landed like a physical blow. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Wallace's face reddened. Jennifer interjected smoothly, diffusing the tension. For the record, Marcus identified the second attack within 10 seconds of reviewing footage. He spotted Chen's surveillance network when our entire team had been missing it for weeks. His military record shows commendations for threat assessment in hostile environments. Board member Sarah Kim, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, leaned forward. "Mr. Kane, do you believe Whitmore Technologies needs a complete security overhaul?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Yes. Integration of physical, digital, and personnel security. Cross-functional analysis. Threat modeling that assumes sophisticated adversaries, not just opportunistic criminals." Wallace scoffed. "That would cost millions and disrupt operations for months." Marcus turned to face him directly. "What's the cost of your CEO being forced to transfer IP at gunpoint? What's the cost of her daughter being kidnapped and used as leverage? Some expenses prevent disasters that would destroy the company." Silence fell across the boardroom. Wallace had no response that wouldn't sound like he was minimizing the threat his own CEO had faced. Elena seized the moment. "I'm creating a new division, Integrated Security Operations. Marcus Kane will lead as director, reporting directly to me. Full autonomy to build the team and protocols as he sees fit." Wallace's objection was immediate. "That's a C-suite level decision without proper vetting or board approval." Elena's voice carried the weight of executive authority earned through crisis. The board hired me to make executive decisions. This is one. Vote if you must, but I'm moving forward regardless." The vote was 6-2 in favor. Wallace and one ally opposed but outvoted. As the meeting adjourned, Wallace cornered Marcus in the hallway, his voice low and threatening. "You're a disruptive element. I'll be watching your every move." Marcus's response was calm, almost friendly. "Good. Then you'll see how security should actually work." 2 weeks later, the world had shifted into a new configuration. David Chen faced federal charges for corporate espionage, conspiracy to kidnap, and reckless endangerment. His legal team was already negotiating plea deals, but prosecutors weren't interested. They wanted an example. Tony Vasquez had pleaded guilty to conspiracy and unauthorized computer access. 5 years with cooperation, his testimony instrumental in building the case against Chen. Whitmore Technologies stock had dipped 8% on the news before recovering within the month. Investor confidence in Elena's crisis management and the new security infrastructure actually strengthened the company's position. Marcus's new office was on the executive floor, no longer a converted storage closet. His team had grown to 8 with more hiring in progress. The salary still felt surreal, more money than he'd ever made even during his military career. Tyler's health insurance covered everything with no copays or deductibles. Tyler's life had changed in small but significant ways. New winter coat bought without checking the price tag. School field trip to the Science Museum with Marcus actually able to chaperone instead of working. The constant background anxiety about money had finally begun to ease. Tyler had noticed the shift. "Dad, you seem happier. Like actually happy. Not just okay." They were eating dinner at the kitchen table, Tyler's homework spread between the plates. Marcus considered the observation. "I am Bud. I found work that matters. Work I'm good at." Emma and Tyler had become genuine friends, their weekly playdates alternating between apartments. Tyler helped Emma with fractions. Emma showed him her mother's office and taught him about the company. Both children were processing their single-parent households, finding kinship in shared experience. Marcus and Elena had developed a working relationship that was professional on the surface but ran deeper underneath. Weekly security briefings that sometimes turned into longer conversations. Coffee meetings that became lunch meetings. Boundaries maintained because both were cautious after loss, but mutual respect deepening with every interaction. 1 month after Chen's arrest, Marcus sat in his office reviewing security upgrades when Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "You have a visitor, Marine Corps representative." Marcus's stomach tightened. He hadn't had contact with his old command in 4 years. Jennifer showed in Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Pierce, dressed in formal blues, Pentagon liaison credentials on her chest. "Master Sergeant Kane, I'm here to discuss reinstatement." Marcus's response was immediate and certain. "I've been out for 4 years. I'm not re-enlisting." Pierce's smile was patient, like she'd expected the resistance. "Not re-enlistment. Consultation contract. We need your expertise on high-value target protection for diplomatic missions. $250,000 per year, 6-month deployments rotating with 6 months stateside." The offer was staggering. More money than even his current position. A chance to use his skills at the highest level again, to serve his country in the way he'd been trained for. But Tyler would live with his sister during deployments. 6 months gone. 6 months of missed school concerts and science projects and ordinary moments that added up to a childhood. "You have 48 hours to decide. This is a rare opportunity, Kane. Don't waste it." After Pierce left, Marcus sat alone, staring at the offer letter. The Marine in him wanted to say yes. The father knew Tyler needed stability more than he needed a hero. Elena appeared in his doorway, Jennifer having briefed her on the visitor. "Military?" Marcus showed her the offer. She read it carefully, her face neutral and unreadable. "That's significant compensation." Marcus nodded, throat tight. "It's what I was trained for. High-level protection threat assessment in hostile environments. But it means leaving for 6 months at a time." Elena sat down across from his desk. "What does Tyler think?" The question cut to the heart of it. "I haven't told him yet. Don't know if I should." Elena was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the careful honesty of someone who'd learned hard lessons. "Can I tell you something? About when I was building this company, I worked 80-hour weeks. Missed Emma's first steps because I was in a board meeting. Missed her kindergarten graduation for an investor pitch. I told myself I was building our future." She met his eyes directly. But Emma didn't need a future empire. She needed her mom. Present, not perfect. Marcus felt the truth of it settle in his chest. "You're saying I should turn it down?" Elena shook her head. "I'm saying Tyler is 10. He won't be 10 again. And from what I've seen, you're already doing the most important protection work there is, raising a good kid." That evening, Marcus sat with Tyler over pizza, their Friday tradition. He laid out the offer honestly, not hiding the truth, but not making the decision for his son either. "Someone offered me a different job today. Important work helping protect people. But I'd have to travel a lot. About half the year." Tyler went very still, his slice of pizza forgotten. "Like when you were in the Marines?" Marcus nodded. "Similar." Tyler tried to be brave, his voice only cracking slightly. "If it's important, you should do it." But Marcus saw through the performance to the fear underneath. The memory of deployments and separations, and the time when Dad went away and Mom got sick and everything fell apart. The decision crystallized with perfect clarity. "You know what? It's not that important. What's important is being here for you, helping with homework, going to concerts, eating pizza on Fridays. I found good work here, work I'm good at, and I don't want to miss watching you grow up." Tyler's relief was visible tension draining from his small shoulders. "Really? You'd stay?" Marcus ruffled his son's hair. "Really. My priorities are here." The next day, Marcus declined the Pentagon offer. Email to Lieutenant Colonel Pierce, brief and final. "Thank you for the opportunity, but my priorities are here." He felt relief, not regret. Some choices were simple once you stopped overthinking them. 3 months later, spring arrived with new growth and new possibilities. Whitmore Technologies had transformed under the new security regime. 12 employees in the Integrated Security Division, now cyber and physical and personnel teams collaborating seamlessly. Threat modeling prevented 2 attempted data breaches before they materialized. Industry recognition came in the form of awards and conference invitations. Marcus's personal life had transformed as well. Better apartment in a better school district. Tyler thriving on the honor roll and excelling in science club and trumpet lessons. Marcus attended every school event without exception, no more missed moments. He'd started seeing a VA counselor for PTSD, finally processing Sarah's death and the combat trauma he'd carried for years. The nightmares came less frequently. The hypervigilance began to ease into something more manageable. Elena had found better balance, too, leaving the office by 6 twice a week. Emma's soccer games became non-negotiable calendar blocks. The company thrived under leadership that had learned to delegate and trust. On Memorial Day weekend, Marcus visited Sarah's grave for the first time in a year. Tyler came with him carrying flowers they'd bought together. They sat in the quiet cemetery, spring sun warm on their faces. "I miss Mom sometimes. Is that okay?" Tyler's voice was small, uncertain. Marcus pulled his son close. "Always okay. I miss her too." Tyler was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been building. "Do you think she'd like Emma and Ms. Whitmore?" Marcus smiled, thinking about Sarah's generous heart and fierce protectiveness. "Yeah, bud, I think she would." He realized then that honoring Sarah's memory didn't mean freezing his life in place. He could remember her and love what they'd had while still allowing new connections. Not replacing her, but making room for growth and change and the possibility of family in unexpected forms. The company picnic in June brought 500 employees and their families to a sprawling park. Marcus coordinated security out of habit, but also relaxed, played volleyball, judged the pie contest. Tyler and Emma entered the 3-legged race and convinced their parents to participate too. Marcus and Elena paired up their legs tied together with a bandana, trying to coordinate movement while Tyler and Emma shouted encouragement. The awkwardness dissolved into laughter as they found rhythm actually pulling ahead of the other parents. They crossed the finish line first, breathless and surprised. In that moment, hands still tied together, eyes meeting with shared joy, something shifted between them. Not a kiss or grand declaration, but recognition of possibility. "You know, a year ago I would have said winning was everything." Elena's voice was soft, almost wondering. "But this just being here, it's enough." Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Yeah, it is." Later, the four of them sat on a picnic blanket while Tyler and Emma played cards. Marcus and Elena watched their children content in the simple present tense of the moment. Marcus's internal voice, the one that had narrated his survival for so long, finally quieted into something gentler. He'd spent years being invisible, thinking safety lived in shadows. But he'd been wrong. Sometimes the bravest thing was letting yourself be seen, being open to connections you didn't know you needed, finding family in unexpected places. Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. "Tyler, your dad is terrible at Go Fish." Tyler grinned. "Your mom's worse. She keeps forgetting what she asked for." Elena laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. "I do not." Marcus smiled, joining the gentle teasing. "You actually do." All four of them laughed together, the sound rising into the spring afternoon. Camera pulled back in Marcus's mind, showing green grass and sunshine, and a moment that wasn't perfect but was real and earned and precious. Not a fairy tale ending, just four people who'd found each other through danger and choice, and the kind of grace that came from facing fear without flinching. The invisible man had become visible at last, and in that visibility he'd found not vulnerability but strength, not exposure but connection, not an ending but a beginning that stretched forward into unknown territory with hope as the only compass needed.